Okay, in this lesson I'm going to talk about dimensional analysis, and I'm going to talk about how to convert lengths using dimensional analysis. I'm going to approach this by looking at the metric system as one island of measurement and the English system as yet another island of measurement. And these islands of measurements can be transformed from one type to another by means of this bridge that we're going to cross, that 2.54 centimeters is exactly equal in length to 1 inch in length. Now you'll notice I drew an upper bridge and a lower bridge because this is not the only conversion factor that you could use to go from metric island over to English island. It's just the one that I've chosen to memorize. Okay, so when I do this converting from one system to another system, one example I could use, 4.5 miles is equal to the same length as how many kilometers. So when I do this conversion, I'm going to first look at a unit that I could break miles down into. So I'd look at it as I'm living here in the house called miles, and I want to drive to a house that I know a conversion factor to get from miles to. Well, I don't know how many miles there are in an inch or how many inches there are in a mile. However, I do know that if you have 1 mile in length, you also have 1,760 yards in length. So I'm going to start with my 4.5 miles, and since I want to multiply that by a prissy version of 1, in this case I'm going to multiply it by 1,760 yards equal to 1 mile in length. Those two measurements are equal in value. So when I do this multiplication, you'll notice that the miles will cancel each other out, plus I want you to notice that 1,760 yards, 1 mile, that's really the same thing as saying 1. 1,760 yards is exactly the same length as 1 mile in length. So I'm really only multiplying 4.5 by a 1. It's just a prissy version of 1. You've dealt with this before. The context that you've dealt with this before is 1/2, and you would create an equivalent fraction to 1/2, say in tenths, by saying that I'm multiplying 1/2 by 5 over 5. 5 times 2 is 10, and 1 times 5 is 5. Notice that when you create equivalent fractions, you're multiplying by a prissy version of 1, 5 over 5. So, back to this idea of a prissy version of 1, I right now have 4.5 miles multiplied by 1,760 yards per 1 mile. Notice that the mile units, mile divided by mile, creates 1. And now you could say that you know how many yards that you had in 4.5 miles. Now I'm not going to stop there because I'm going to multiply by another prissy version of 1. My next prissy version of 1 is I'm going to convert from yards to feet. I know that there are 3 feet to 1 yard. So my equivalency relationship, you'll notice once again I'm putting yard on the bottom. Every 1 yard is worth 3 feet. So I have to stop and make sure that I actually am multiplying by a prissy version of 1. Yes, I for sure am, because 3 feet are trade-inable for 1 yard. So now I'm going to go with my next conversion because I'm currently located. I've driven from miles to yards. I've driven from yards to feet. But in order to cross over to the metric island, I must drive from feet to inches. So to do that driving, I need to know how many inches to a foot or how many feet to an inch. Well, inches are smaller. There are 12 of them to 1 foot. So I'll put 12 inches to 1 foot. You'll notice once again I put the foot in the denominator because the feet then will cancel out. Ft divided by Ft will make a unit, 1, and Yd and Yd, they're being divided, so I have a unit of 1. Notice that now I'm located right at the edge of the bridge. I live in inches. So I can go ahead and convert from inches over to centimeters by every 1 inch has the same length as 2.54 centimeters. Inches cancel inches, and now I'm in centimeters. So now what's relevant is I've actually made it across the bridge, and I'm living here at the edge of the bridge in metric land. However, I wanted to convert to kilometers, not to centimeters. So now I need to think about my metric ladder. So if I want to convert from centimeters to kilometers, looking at the relevant portion of the ladder, I have centi here and I have kilometer here, and you remember that Every change by a rung is a multiplication or a division by 10. So since I'm going to convert from centimeter to kilometer, I'm going to put centimeter on the bottom. I'm going to put kilometer on the top. Now going to my metric ladder, the decision that I need to make is which unit is larger, kilometer or centimeter. You'll recall that higher up the ladder means larger unit, smaller number. So I'm going to put a 1 with the kilometer, and then looking at kilometer, if you change 1 kilometer to hectometers, you have 10 hectometers, 100 decameters, 1,000 base unit meter in this case, 10,000 decimeters, and 100,000 centimeters, because every rung down the ladder multiplies your number by 10. So as you move down the ladder for each rung, you multiply by 10. If we had been moving up the ladder for each number, we would be dividing by 10. So we have 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 centimeters. Well, 100,000 is this number, 100,000, but that's inconvenient to fit in that tiny space, so I'll express it using powers on 10, 10 to the 5th, because 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. 10 to the 5th is equivalent to 100,000. So I'll put 10 to the 5th here. So now I'm ready to type on the calculator. And what I'm going to have to do is 4.5 times 1760 times 3 times 12 times 2.54 divide. Notice anytime that I have some number in the denominator, I'm going to press the divide key. So I could actually do 4.5 times 1760 divide 1, but not going to be very exciting because division by 1 isn't going to change the value of my number. So I'm going to go ahead and type this out real quickly. 4.5 multiply 1760 multiply 3 multiply 12 times 2.54 times 1, that's not going to do anything, divide 10 to the 5th. And you don't need to worry about the fact that your 10 to the 5th you typed in last, because the calculator does understand order of operations, and it does understand that 10 to the 5th power is an exponential number, and it's going to automatically do 10 to the 5th first, then it's going to multiply, and then divide last. So you'll notice the answer is 7.24 and a bunch more numbers. Since I had 2 digits to begin with, I'm going to make sure that I have 2 digits to end with. 7.2 kilometers. Notice the centimeters cancel with the centimeters, and I end up with my answer in kilometers. So another thing I wanted to point out, I said something about digits. If we were in science class, we'd say that thing had 2 significant digits, so our answer should have 2 significant digits. Now, since we're working on this from Math 128, Algebra for Allied Health, I just want you to be kind of reasonable. If that thing has 2 numbers, that thing ought to have 2 numbers. We'll talk more about place value as we go. All right, I want to try to give you one more example quickly before I close this video, and then I'll move from converting lengths to converting volumes. Okay, so my second example that I have for you, I want to convert millimeters to feet. So I have 1,520 millimeters, and I want to know how many feet that is equal to in length. So I'm going to start with my 1,520 millimeters. Now you'll notice this time I'm living over on the other island. I'm living over here on metric island. So I need to move from metric island, in this case millimeters. Using my ladder, I'm going to drive over until I get to the bridge, which is centimeters. Then, once I cross the bridge, I'll be concerned with more conversion factors. So if I have 1,520 millimeters, the relevant portion of the ladder this time, milli and centi. Milli and centi because I need to move from millimeters over to centimeter. So I'm going to multiply by my Prissy version of 1, in this case millimeter in the denominator, centimeter in the numerator, because I want to cancel the millimeters. However, I need to go up to the ladder and decide which unit is bigger, milli or centi. Well, centi is the bigger unit. So if it's the bigger unit, I'm going to choose to give it a 1, and I'm going to convert 1 centimeter to so many millimeters. Well, centi to milli, moving down the ladder by 1 rung. So down the ladder by 1 rung means a multiplication by 10. So 1 centimeter is the same length as 10 millimeters. So if I look at it this way, that's a Prissy version of 1. So I'm going to continue that idea. And now I have driven to the base of the bridge. I'm sitting here at 2.54 centimeters to 1 inch. That's the bridge that I can cross to go from metric measurement to English measurement. So I'm going to put centimeters on the bottom and inches on the top. And every 2.54 centimeters is equivalent to 1 inch in length. Notice centimeters cancel centimeter, and I'm to inches. If that was all I wanted, I would stop. However, you remember I want to get to feet. So I'll say in inches converted to feet. So it's basically like while I'm on this island, I'm driving from inches over to the house that belongs to the feet family. So I'm going to go 1 centimeter is equivalent, or 1 inch is equivalent to 12 feet. Well, clearly that's not okay. Think about the length measurements. 1 inch, 12 feet, no way. And I'm trying to multiply by a Prissy version of 1. So I recall that 12 inches have the same length as 1 foot. So my conversion factor here is 12 inches to 1 foot. So you have to pause each time and make sure that your numbers are in the right location relative to your units. So inch had to be in the denominator because I want to cancel inch with inch. I canceled centimeter, centimeter, I canceled millimeter, millimeter, and I have 1 foot is the same in length as 12 inches. So at that point, I know I'm finished except for typing on the calculator. So in typing on the calculator, I need 1520 divide 10. Notice I'm going to say divide again, 2.54. Then I could say multiply by 1, but it's not going to do anything because multiplication by 1 is the identity of multiplication. Divide by 12. And I get 4.98687,664. A whole bunch of stuff. Well, I had 3 non-zero or 3 significant figures. This 0 is important in that he's a placeholder. However, he's not a significant digit. So we have 3 non-zero digits, so we need to round this so that we have 3 non-zero numbers. So my choices are 4.98 and 4.99. Well, 4.99 is the rounded value, so I have 4.99 feet. So 1,522 millimeters is the same length, is equivalent to 4.99 feet. Okay, I'm going to shut this video off and then we'll go on to part 2, which will be converting volumes.